Man, there sure are a lot of Pokemon card sets, aren't there? I mean, over 100 sets is pretty ridiculous, right? Well, it's going to be my goal to attempt to shortly review every single set that came out in the Pokemon TCG, at least for English for now. The goal of the series will be to review a set, look at all the different artists in the set, and give you a final verdict. What kind of score out of 10 are we looking at for this set? How good is the set? How well does it hold up? Things like that. We'll be looking at a bunch of different factors and determining whether a set is good or whether it's bad. And I hope you guys are willing to join me. Today, we're going to be looking at the artwork of base set. What is so great about base set? I wasn't really around when base set was a thing. Heck, I wasn't even conceived when base set came into existence. So my question to you is, what's so great about base set? In this quick video, I'll talk about a few different things about base set, such as a set overview, the different artists in base set, my final thoughts, and my overall ranking of base set. Just a fair warning, I might be a little harsher in this review, so hopefully that's okay with everyone. Alright, let's just get this started with. Base set was released January 9th, 1999. The set features 102 cards in the set, with 16 holo cards. This set only had 4 artists that worked on it, who we'll talk about very shortly. The set was the introduction of Pokemon back in the 90s, so we received many Pokemon from the first generation, but certainly not all of them, as they were spread out into multiple sets' first few releases for Pokemon. Alright, now it's time to talk about the artists. There were 4 new artists introduced in the base set. Well, they were introduced for the first time ever, actually. The first artist we're going to be talking about here is Tomoaki Imakuni. Tomoaki Imakuni is the artist that gave us the Porygon. This card is very, very basic. The polygonal trees and the polygonal grass, with this obviously very polygonal Pokemon, I would say is a pretty good fit in the set. Not terribly breathtaking or anything, but for our first rendition of the Pokemon, it definitely could have been way worse. Honestly, it's not bad, but it's not my favorite card from the set. Our next artist that we're going to talk about is Keiji Kinabuchi, who worked on a good majority of the set. I would say that Kinabuchi's style is a simplistic 3D style, very, very early computer-generated cards. Let's talk about one of their Pokemon cards, being the Voltorb. I feel like this card is a decent enough introduction of the Pokemon. The expression on its face is simplistic, and those neon pink and blue lights are somewhat pleasing to the eyes. I think that the background is very, non-existent, to say the least. For a trainer card that Kinabuchi did, we'll mention the Switch card. I feel like this is probably the best trainer that they did in the set, featuring Kakuna and Magnemite. I think that this card showcases the idea of a Pokemon switching out pretty well, and the colored lines add a little something to the empty space that is the background. And now, we have Ken Sugimori, who worked on a vast majority of the set. As this was the first ever set released for Pokemon cards, I will cut him a little slack, but I will not be this generous to him in the future. For Pokemon, let's talk about the Dratini. The pose of the Pokemon is very basic, with us just getting a very rough look at what the Pokemon looks like, with some sand or snow on the floor, and a dropping sunset in the background. It's a simple card, but not an awful one. I'll also talk about that Mewtwo holo that they got. For a Ken Sugimori card, it's actually not too bad. Pretty stylized with that huge head, and a decent pose with its arms out, and nothing screaming out at me though, it's still a pretty decent holo card nonetheless. For a trainer, I gotta go with the Imposter Professor Oak. This card is just cool. This dude is straight up a menace. This illustration is simple, but the shadow cast on the background adds some pretty nice depth, I must say. Alright, now time to talk about the legend himself, Mitsuhiro Arita. I must say, for the first set ever released, Arita's artwork still holds up to this day. Why do you think we've seen 1,000 iterations of the base set Charizard? Anyways, speaking of that card, let's actually talk about it. I think that the pose for this card is actually pretty decent. You have a Charizard bending its neck in an interesting way. I think that one of the reasons that this card is so iconic is that the pose for the holo is actually interesting. There's so many cards in base set, and not a lot of them are really evocative. Like, look at the Chansey holo. That card is literally just the Pokemon standing there, putting its arms up to his face. I mean, no hate to people who stand like Chansey, but I don't really want to be a Chansey. I kinda want to be a Charizard, you know what I'm saying? The base set Charizard, spitting out that fire, it's a pretty cool thing as well. And I think it's a pretty good card in a pretty decent set. And now, let's look at Arita's Abra. I think that the way that it sits in front of the tree, looking like it's sleeping, is a pretty cool image. Just would be nice on a postcard or something. I think that this card is not actually bad either. I think the artwork itself is pretty iconic, so I got no complaints there. Now I must say, base set is not a bad set. Not at all. But it's definitely not the peak of all Pokemon sets. I'm not going to sit here and baby you, my awesome viewers, pretending like base set is like the best set with the best set of artwork or anything, because it's simply not. However, I think that base set is certainly an influential set, so that brings it up a few notches for me. I think that there are definitely worse sets in the Generation 1 era. The introduction of Pokemon in the TCG world starts with base set, so without base set, no Pokemon cards. I get that. And I understand that a ton of kids back in the day played with the base set cards for years and years. I also get that. But, as Pokemon do, we evolve and change over time, which is why I love the Pokemon TCG. As the artwork has gone so far, so many places, the artists are the reason that the TCG is the way that it is today. So I have to say, only having 4 artists definitely holds the set back. I think out of the first couple sets, this one is definitely on the lower tiers. I'm not saying the set is bad, but the lack of diversity is really holding the set back for me. If base set is your favorite set of all time, wonderful. I'm happy that it is. But for me, a newer collector, I see greater value in other sets. Not to mention, 30 cards in base set are all just trainers and energies, so there's really only 70 actual Pokemon cards, which puts it more in line with Jungle and Fossil, because I think there's only around 60 Pokemon or so in each of those sets, so there really isn't so much of a difference in size in the Pokemon standpoint. Anyways, all that said, I think that my overall score for base set is around a 6.8 out of 10, maybe closer to like 7, but I think the nostalgia of this set, combined with Arita's simple style, but really effective artworks, bring the set up a lot. I think that some of the backgrounds in Ken Sugimori's cards are also okay, and the set size is a plus, as it pads it out a lot. The holo cards in this set are certainly iconic, for sure. However, I don't think that is enough to save this set and bring it up to like a 10 out of 10. And by the way, that score would only be for the first Generation 1 sets, as overall the score for base set would probably be lower, but since it's my first video in the series, I don't want to overwhelm myself taking in every single set into account at once. I think that base set is cool, but definitely not my favorite. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments below. This has been Daunter. Hope you guys have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.